All right, welcome to Forbidden Knowledge News Con 2020. It's going to be an awesome weekend. We have 12 amazing presenters, 3 roundtable discussions, and all the presenters are going to be able to answer some questions for you. We'll have some interactive discussions. The presenters this weekend are going to cover all your favorite topics: conspiracy, ufology, hidden history, paranormal, spirituality, consciousness, the occult, and our current dystopian state of society. It's going to be a long night, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to have our roundtable discussion about contactee experiences and UFOs and a little bit of paranormal. We have Karen Holton and Preston Dennett joining us. Karen, Preston, how are y'all doing?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, doing great.
Yeah,
Pretty
welcome.
excited.
Yes, I am very excited. Excited to hear your presentations. Before we get started with this, why don't you give everybody a little description of what you're going to be presenting later on? We can start with you, Karen.
Okay, the title is Love, Sex, and Politics in Outer Space. And I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of how I became involved with ET, what their program is about, how it benefits humanity. And then I'm going to get right into pretty much a deep dive into the culture of the beings that live aboard one of the big ships. And the big ships are like city ships, they're huge. And beings are immigrating and emigrating from these big ships all the time. And each one has its unique culture. And so I'm going to get into all the details about how they live, how they communicate, how they reproduce, all kinds of details that I've never heard anywhere before. There are people that have similar experiences to mine, but for some reason, I've been allowed to remember the details about the culture. So we're going to do a deep dive into the culture and the politics of ET aboard one of the big ships.
Awesome. That sounds great. I can't wait for that. And what do you have for us, Preston?
Oh, I'm pretty excited. Today I'm going to be talking about, it's actually a hybrid presentation, no pun intended. I'm going to be talking about Schoolyard UFO Encounters. These are cases in which UFOs hover over schools or actually land right next to schools. Humanoids are often seen. I've got 100 cases documented, well, more now. And I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite of these types of cases, some of the more extensive ones you probably haven't heard about. And I'm also going to talk about a really interesting subject, which I've recently explored, which is UFOs at the drive-in. And I know this is a weird subject. It's very niche, but I investigated a case in which UFOs were seen hovering right next to a drive-in movie and thought it was unique. Turns out it's not. There are quite a few of these types of cases. Again, I've documented more than 100, recently got a flood of new cases. And yeah, I'm going to pick out my favorite of those kind, some of the more extensive ones, some of the more dramatic ones, and really dive deep. And to cap it all off, I'm going to give everyone a little bit of the scoop, actually, on my latest book, which has not yet been released. It's called Wondrous 25 UFO Encounters, and share some absolutely brand new cases I'm sure no one's heard of before because they have not been published. So that's going to be all kinds of fun.
Awesome. Yes, that's going to be great. Looking forward to all of that. All right. So to start off with our little discussion today, I thought we could each go over one of the most profound, unexplained, or paranormal experiences that each of us have had personally. Excuse me. Now, Karen, I know you've had a lot, and you've been actually taken on ships in your sleep and many experiences, but maybe what was your first experience that really kind of changed everything for you, if you know what I mean?
It works better if I unmute my mic. Yes, thank you, Chris. Okay, yes, I think that's great because I want to say how it all started. It started rather significantly with me. I had had a lot of paranormal adventures, minor ones, but I had kept shutting them down because, quite frankly, I thought I might be a bit nuts because nobody else was having these kind of experiences. I'd never heard of it, and I didn't trust my own experience. But what's interesting is life throws us curveballs for a reason. And I had a very, very dark life experience that I had to go through. And this was about the early 1990s. And I had an angelic visitation, and it just blew my mind, rocked my socks, rocked me to my core, and really opened me up. And I think that is what led on to my experiences with other, ET, interdimensionals, etc. So anyway, I would just say that I was in a very, very deep state of grieving. I didn't think I was going to survive. And as I became very much entrenched in a very low frequency energy pattern, I somehow was imprinted by the energy of somebody who had previously lived in the same house and had committed suicide in a very specific way. Now, I didn't find out until several years later, but in the meantime, I had an overwhelming urge to off myself in this very same specific way, not realizing the connection. And I was feeling so bad and so hopeless, I was actually going to do it. And then I had an angelic visitation, and it just blew my mind. It was so huge. It was visual, it was auditory. I saw these beings that were like points of light with light flashing out the sides like wings. And it's like, I don't know if it was one or a bunch, but it was like 1,000 voices all talking to me in English, at the same time, completely perfectly synchronized. And they told me that when life gets really tough, there are exit points that we can take. Of course, the lessons that we don't learn because we take an exit point will come back to us to be addressed later, but that is a possibility. But they said if I wanted to stay, they would offer me a helper. And I thought, this completely blew my mind. I got to tell you, it took me a couple of years just to sort of recover from this experience. It was so big and so intense. Anyway, I couldn't think of what I wanted because who gets offered gifts from angels? How often does that happen? I never heard of anything like that. So I took a few days to think about it, and I realized what I needed was wisdom, because without wisdom, I wasn't going to make it. And so I asked for wisdom. And it was funny. I thought they'd just pour the wisdom into me, but it didn't work like that. They gave me the life experience so that I could gain the wisdom. So be careful what you ask for. But at the same time, I have no regrets. And that seemed to have, that experience led me on to, opened me up and led me on to many, many paranormal experiences after that.
Now, Karen, would you say that, when experiences like this happen, if you're asking for something, you're asking these beings for help, it's not always going to just help you. They're not just going to give you what you want. They kind of maybe educate you so you can help yourself and do the things for yourself and give you a little bit of insight and maybe a nudge in a certain direction. Isn't that right? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. What happened after that was an uncanny string of earth-shattering events that pushed me to the limits of who I understand that I am, so that I could learn. But the difference was, previous to this angelic experience, I sort of felt I was a bit on my own. I believed in God, and I knew that God was with me, but I didn't really understand how literally they are here and with us. And so as I went through every single challenge, what happened was they were with me every step of the way. And I learned to stop going to external sources for expert help and to go inward to internal sources for the expert help that I needed. And so it facilitated a tremendous shift in my way of perceiving, thinking, believing, and that set me up for now, which is, I have such an unbelievable life. I never dreamed I would have such a great life. Seriously.
That's awesome. Oh, and I want to remind everybody watching to chime in at any time in the comments. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to join in, ask any of us any questions at any time, any comments, just feel free, just leave those in the chat. All right, Preston, what about you? What's the most crazy, profound thing that you've experienced?
That's a difficult question because I've had a string of them for sure. But I began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986, and pretty much shattered my whole worldview. It was not good news as far as I was concerned. I had to really readjust my entire belief system, but had been investigating UFOs for about 5 years and had really immersed myself in the subject, bought all the books. I mean, I joined every UFO organization, attended all the meetings, conventions, but still could not wrap my head around the fact that ETs were here visiting us, I think in large numbers. So I'd often go over to my brother's house and my sister-in-law, who really helped me to deal with this situation. And I was in the middle of a huge investigation, a wave of sightings over my hometown in Topanga Canyon, and had gone over to their house one evening in late July, 1992, I believe it was. And I was just talking late into the night about UFOs. Had never really seen one. I saw some, ambiguous lights, things like that, but never anything that I knew for sure was absolutely, a UFO. And it got late. I'm like, okay, guys, I have to work. I have to go home. It was about, I'm going to say 11 p.m. or so. And this was in Woodland Hills, California, a very densely populated suburb. Got into the car and I'm driving home. It's about 5 miles away, where I lived in a little condominium complex. And I'm just heading down this tiny little side street where my brother lived. Heading I was going maybe 2 or 3 miles per hour around this very tight hairpin corner when I saw what I first thought was a bird way up in the sky swooping down towards my car. This was, 300 feet away, pretty high up. And I knew instantly it wasn't a bird because it was glowing. I thought, well, it's a firework. It's late July. I'm thinking, okay, someone's got shooting off fireworks. But it became immediately apparent it wasn't that either. So I kind of went through this little process of theory escalation, trying to figure out what was going on. And literally it just took a couple of seconds when it was a ball of light, a very small ball of light about the size of I'm going to say golf ball, perhaps a little larger. And this darn thing comes swooping down out of the sky and stops right in front of my windshield. No kidding. I'm saying maybe a foot, 2 feet away from my windshield, stops, goes back and forth, 2, maybe 3 times, stops again. I mean, my mouth is just dropped. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Because I don't know, when something like this happens, it's a little bit difficult to absorb. And this thing sort of stopped there, looked at me. I sensed intelligence coming from it. It was just a very soft yellow-white orb. It moves forward, dips down a little bit, almost skims the ground, and then goes straight up. And I remember leaning forward and looking up and watching this thing. And that was it, or so I thought. For years, this is a story I would tell. I saw this orb. And then one day, someone asked me, what happened after that? And I scratched my head. I'm like, I don't remember. I don't remember driving home. And in fact, I forgot the experience. It went out of my mind. And having interviewed a number of people who've had, missing time, they would tell me that, we didn't talk about it. I'm like, what? It was right over your car. It sucked you up and you didn't talk about it? They're like, no, I forgot about it. And I never quite understood how you could forget such a profound experience. Well, I understand now. It was I'm going to say, maybe a year later. It could have been a couple of months. Could have been, I'm not quite sure. But one day it just popped into my mind like, hey, that happened. And I remembered it vividly. I've seen UFOs since then, and usually I'm like, oh my God, and I immediately call up my friends or whatever, or my family, and I write it down and think about it that night. That's not what happened in this case. Took me several years, I think, to realize I think I had missing time. And now I'm really wondering about it. I actually just looked up this spot virtually on Google Maps and saw the exact corner. It brought tears to my eyes. I shook a little bit. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of emotion connected to this. That's another red flag. So yeah, I think I may have been taken. I'm actually, considering regressive hypnosis, trying to remember maybe what happened through meditation, which is advice I always give to other people who've had missing time. But now I'm like, I was investigating UFOs, and wasn't long before they started investigating me. Turns out this is a thing. It's called UFO investigators disease.
I was just about to ask you that, if that's kind of like a thing. People that look into this topic a lot end up finding what they're looking for, sometimes unexpectedly.
Yeah, it's absolutely a thing. I started looking into it because this happened to Ed Conroy, who decided he was going to investigate Whitley Strieber's encounters. And he dived in, and wasn't long before he had encounters. So I started surveying all the major researchers, and I'm like, whoa, a lot of them have had encounters. So I'm okay. I think that once you start investigating this, the ETs are very much aware of what's going on. They're really on top of things. I wouldn't be surprised if they're listening to this conference right now. So shout out to the ETs.
Yeah, hey, I've heard that they attend conferences often just to see what's going on there.
Yeah, I've heard that myself and heard some firsthand accounts. So yeah, I'm sure they're very aware of UFO researchers. And that was my first real experience that made me realize, oh my God, I have gone from skeptic to investigator to contactee.
Hey, that's pretty insane. Now, did you have any other like missing time experiences after that, or any other experiences besides that that you could say it possibly could have been an abduction or something?
It's entirely possible. I know missing time can be seamless. People just don't know. And I do remember one time I was driving along with my sister-in-law. We were on the way home actually from meeting a contactee who had become a good friend. And we're just heading along the 118 freeway when suddenly we're looking around us and like, where are we? And we had ended up almost we drove all the way. We were supposed to turn off into the San Fernando Valley. We ended up driving all the way through Simi Valley, and we're practically in Ventura when Christy turns to me and says, where are we? We were absorbed in conversation, but shoot, I'm a pretty aware driver. I've never gotten in an accident. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. We had somehow driven, 20 miles and not even aware of it. And to this day, I wonder, like, how the heck did that happen? So little things like that. I've had some very close-up UFO sightings since then. Some with telepathic contact. Straight out, they talk to me. And yeah, I've seen UFOs on a good 10, even 20 occasions. And all have had these little sort of weird synchronicities to them that make me know for sure they're aware of us.
Yeah, and you mentioned telepathic or psychic communication, which could probably bring me to my experience. Now, I've never had a paranormal or UFO or contact experience until recently. I've done this show for almost 4 years now, and I've been interested in this topic and researching these things for years. And I've never had an experience, but I've always, been open-minded to it and looked into it and wanted to have an experience just so I could, have this proof or knowing. And I'll give you the shortened version of what happened. It was basically a meditation experience where, it was a tough time in my life. I was going through a breakup at the time. And I remember Well, it started with a UFO, actually. I was talking with someone outside and happened to look up, and there was these three orange triangles that looked like flames in a triangular formation just going straight up in the sky. And I saw it, and it wasn't like anything I've ever seen before. I couldn't really identify what it was. And it almost slowed down to a stop and then just shot off and it was gone. I was like, oh, that was interesting. I couldn't say for sure that it was extraterrestrial or off planet, but it was very interesting. I've never seen anything like it. But I kind of forgot about it after a few days. And during this time, I had been trying to do some meditation, and I never really got that far with it. I had some kind of block where I couldn't get past a certain point, and I'd just get frustrated and stop. One day, I just kind of decided to let go, and I got further. I got really far, really deep into a meditative state, and basically, I made contact with something. It started with me. It seemed like my consciousness was traveling. I saw geometric shapes. I was getting all kinds of information flowing into my brain. Very confusing, but I knew it was. I knew it was information that I didn't know before, or if I did, I don't know how I was unlocking it somehow. And then all of a sudden, I felt this kind of like a presence in my meditative state. This blue light I saw in my mind's eye, and as this blue light approached, I felt this massive feeling of love that I've never felt before. It was it was like a unearthly feeling. I've experienced love with my family, you know, past relationships, but this was something I've never felt before. It was amazing. It was really one of the best feelings I've ever felt. And whatever this was started to communicate. It introduced itself. It said hello. And I communicated back, and I just expressed how great it felt to communicate. And it got intense for a while. We talked for a couple hours. It took me a while to get over the fact that I was communicating with something other than myself. It was really amazing communication. It was psychic. I would ask it a question, and before I could even finish the question, it was answering it in my mind. And we had very profound conversation about myself, what I'm doing here in this incarnation on this planet here, and what's going on the planet. And it was very intense information, and I got a lot out of it. I learned a lot. I contacted Karen. Karen kind of helped me understand a bit about what was happening here, and it continued for a couple of days. I didn't contact. I tried it again a couple of days later because I was having doubts that it was even real, that I even experienced it. And I was able to make contact again. This time was even more insane because during my meditative state, I could open my eyes and see my room and my surroundings, the room that I was in. But when I closed my eyes, I could see myself on a ship. I could see out massive windows. And I could feel this feeling of love coming from multiple entities around me. And eventually I could see what looked like etheric beings, very strange looking etheric beings. It was like a scene out of Star Wars. They had hairy, large beings. They had this thing that looked kind of like a frog that was actually speaking with me. And I was just trying to put all this together and, trying to understand how this was real. And, just the feeling that I got from these entities and was nothing like nothing I've ever felt. It was very comforting and very loving feeling. And they had a conversation with me as well. And, I look back at all this and I can't say for sure what happened. I don't, I couldn't tell you if it was extraterrestrials or something else, some kind of interdimensional beings, or just a part of my mind that I unlocked. I couldn't tell you for sure. If I said I knew, I'd be lying. But something happened, and it was very profound experience, and I did get a lot out of it, and I learned from it no matter what it was. Um, I'd I'd like to believe, I think that it was an intelligence other than mine that I got in touch with. Um, and it happened again, and it actually, I was having, I was very sick one day, and I asked to help with the sickness. I was in extreme pain, and usually when I'm in pain like that, it's gonna last for hours, and it doesn't just go away. And these beings or entities kind of helped me get past that in a very quick manner. And it was the most profound experience of my life, and having that gave me a sense of knowing that there is something else out there. I don't know what it is, if it's aliens or angels or interdimensional beings. I believe that there is definitely something, and I hope to continue to have experiences like this so I can maybe figure out a little bit more about it. But yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah,
Now,
I've heard many stories like that, by the way. Many people have told
yeah.
me that they felt more powerful love from gray ETs even than they've ever felt from any other being.
Now
So
I
yeah,
have a question about grays later, but is this common that for people to have this during meditative experiences, Preston?
oh yeah, yeah. Meditation, I think, is something that's universal in all spiritual traditions, religions. Uh, that's the one advice I think all spiritual masters give. Meditation is very powerful. It's very transformative. Uh, People should do it every day. It's a great avenue of spiritual growth. I can't recommend it enough. It's super helpful in numerous ways and definitely opens people up and allows contact to happen much easier to not only your spirit guides, ETs, the other side, all of it. It's absolutely a wonderful thing.
Now, Karen,
One,
whenever I had this
sorry.
experience, you also had a kind of simultaneous experience that kind of solidified that there was something going on, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say. What was really interesting is Chris called me the night that it was, or the afternoon or evening it was happening, and I said he was pretty blown away by the experience, and I totally got that it was real. But I said to him, don't worry about it, go to sleep, get up tomorrow and see how you feel about it once everything has sort of fallen, the pieces have fallen into place, and you get to recover a bit from the experience. And then I went to bed that night, and my guide, one of my guides, I call him Bob the Gray, he showed me Chris on board a massive big ship with all different kinds of beings. And Chris was talking to this really tall blue guy, and he had like a long neck, and he was bald, and he was blue. And I went, oh my God, I thought that's really cool. Now my guides don't show me anything unless it's got a purpose, right? So I don't know what the purpose even is. I just follow through with the part I'm supposed to play. So I went online because I'm not familiar with a lot of the common ET types that are, that most people are familiar with, because the beings I deal with are galactic or intergalactic, which is another sort of, I don't know, realm. Anyway, so I did some research, and I looked through some images on blue beings and search engine, and it came up with a couple images, and I sent them to Chris. I said, Chris, does your guy look anything like these guys? And Chris said, oh my God, Karen, you hit the nail on the head. So if that isn't proof, I don't know what is. And, yeah, and it was great. So, yeah, so anyway.
Yeah. So that that kind of let me know that there was something more going on, and Karen helped me understand a lot about the experience, which was great. And yeah, like I said, I've had here and there a couple of other little experiences of communication and downloads, but nothing as profound as those. But we'll see. I'm still looking open to it and ready for anything if they have more messages.